Welcome back to the channel. I'm Algabot, and today we're breaking down a MetaTrader 5 expert advisor called Thrust Retrace Ignition. This is a pure price action strategy, which means it uses no indicators at all. Instead, it reads the raw shape of the candles themselves. It hunts for an explosive momentum candle, waits patiently for a shallow pullback, and then enters when price reignites in the original direction. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how it spots that pattern, how it places its stop loss and take profit, and how every setting shapes its behavior. Let's dive in. Let's start with the big picture. Thrust Retrace Ignition is a momentum continuation scalper, and it was designed to run on the 5-minute chart of gold, the symbol XAUUSD. What makes it unusual is that it carries no moving averages, no oscillators, and no smoothing filters of any kind. Every decision it makes comes from measuring the open, high, low, and close of recent candles. In other words, it reads price action the way a discretionary trader might, but it does so mechanically and without emotion. The core idea rests on 3 stages, and the name of the strategy follows them in order. The first stage is the thrust. This is a single completed candle whose body is far larger than the recent average range, and which fills most of its own range, almost like a near-marubozu power candle. That kind of candle represents a burst of buying or selling pressure, a genuine displacement in price. The second stage is the retrace. After such a powerful move, the strategy expects a small, shallow pullback. It allows price to drift back a little, but not too far. If the pullback is deep, the strategy concludes that the momentum has been absorbed and it abandons the idea entirely. The third stage is the ignition. When a later candle closes back through the extreme of that original thrust and closes with conviction, the strategy enters a trade in the direction of the thrust. A bullish thrust leads to a buy, a bearish thrust leads to a sell. The logic is fully symmetric, treating both sides of the market the same way. This kind of expert advisor is best suited to traders who already appreciate candle structure and want to study how a clean, rules-based momentum system behaves. Remember, this is for educational purposes only and is not financial advice. We're here to understand the mechanics, not to chase outcomes. Now let's walk through the exact logic, step by step. The strategy works only on completed candles, so every decision is made once per bar using the candle that just closed. This avoids reacting to a candle that is still forming and still changing. First, the strategy detects a thrust. It measures the body of the just closed candle, which is the distance between its open and close, and compares that to the average range of the recent look-back window. If the body is at least the BodyFactor multiple of that average range, and the body fills at least the BodyDominance fraction of the candle's own high-to-low range, the candle qualifies as a power candle. At that moment, the strategy arms itself. It records the direction of the thrust, it stores the thrust's extreme as the breakout level, sometimes called the trigger, and it notes the candle's range as a yardstick for measuring everything that follows. Second, the strategy watches the retrace. Over the next few bars, set by the pullback bar's window, it tracks how far price pulls back from the breakout level. For a bullish setup, it follows the lowest low, and for a bearish setup, it follows the highest high. If that pullback ever runs deeper than the RetraceMax fraction of the thrust's range, the strategy decides the momentum is gone and it disarms. The setup is voided. Third, the strategy looks for ignition. While the pullback stays shallow, it checks whether a candle has closed back through the breakout level. For a long, the close must push above the thrust's high. For a short, the close must drop below the thrust's low. On top of that, the closing candle must show conviction, what the code calls a momentum close, meaning it closes in the leading 60% of its own range in the trade direction. When both conditions line up, the strategy signals an entry in the thrust direction. Finally, risk is defined entirely by price structure. The stop loss is placed just beyond the pullback extreme, padded by a small buffer derived from the thrust range. The distance from entry to stop becomes the risk. The take profit is then set as a reward-to-risk multiple of that distance, controlled by the RewardRisk setting. The strategy holds only one position at a time, and once a trade is live, the stop and target manage it to completion. If the ignition window expires with no entry, the setup simply resets and the search begins again. Let's read through the code you're seeing on screen, just as you'd find it inside MetaEditor. At the top are the input parameters. Lots sets the position size. Loopback bars is the window used to compute the average candle range. The baseline the thrust is measured against. BodyFactor decides how large the thrust must be relative to that average. Raising it demands a more explosive candle and produces fewer, stronger signals. BodyDominance controls how solid the candle must be, how much of its own range the body fills. A higher value insists on a cleaner near-marubozu shape. Pullback bars sets how many bars the strategy will wait for ignition before giving up. RetraceMax caps how deep the pullback may go before the setup is voided. And RewardRisk sets the size of the target relative to the risk. Now the signal logic. The strategy measures body as the absolute distance from open to close, and range as the high minus the low. The Boolean named powerful combines both tests. The body must be at least BodyFactor times the average range, and the body divided by the range must clear BodyDominance. When that's true, a thrust is born. Once armed, the bullish ignition check fires when the close pushes above the stored trigger, the thrust high, and is momentum close confirms the candle closed in the leading 60% of its range. That calls trienter with a +1, opening a buy. Finally, the stop loss sits at the pullback extreme minus a small buffer, and the take profit is the entry plus RewardRisk times the measured risk. Clean, mechanical, and driven entirely by price. Let's walk through this illustration, which shows both a long trade and a short trade in sequence. Because this strategy uses no oscillator, the key levels you see drawn on the candles are the thrust extremes themselves, the breakout triggers that the strategy reclaims. Start on the left. After a couple of quiet candles, a large bullish power candle prints. Its body dwarfs the recent average range, so the strategy marks this as a thrust and stores its high, the green dashed line, as the long trigger. Over the next two candles, price drifts gently lower in a shallow retrace, never falling deep enough to void the setup. Then a strong candle closes back above that green trigger line with a firm momentum close. That's the buy ignition. The strategy enters long, placing its stop just below the pullback low and its take profit a reward to risk multiple above. Price then pushes higher candle by candle until it reaches the take profit, and the long trade closes in profit. Now watch the right side for the mirror image. A large bearish power candle prints, and the strategy stores its low, the red dashed line, as the short trigger. Price retraces gently upward, staying shallow. Then a decisive candle closes back below the red trigger with a momentum close to the downside. That's the sell ignition. The strategy enters short, with its stop just above the pullback high and its target measured the same way. Price falls toward the take profit, and the short trade closes. Notice how identical the two patterns are, just flipped. This is the fully symmetric thrust, retrace, ignition cycle. And of course, this is a clean illustration for educational purposes only. So that's thrust retrace ignition. We covered how it spots an explosive thrust candle using pure candle geometry, how it waits for a shallow retrace, and how it enters on ignition when price reclaims the thrust extreme with conviction. We also walked through the MQL5 code, the input parameters, and a clear chart showing both a long and a short trade from start to finish. Remember, everything here is educational content only and is not financial advice. If you found this breakdown helpful, please like the video, subscribe for more MetaTrader 5 strategy analyses, and drop a comment telling me which strategy you'd like me to cover next. You can find more at www.algobot.live. Past performance does not guarantee future results. Trade responsibly.